Hello, my name is Sam Ruby. This is the Apache Way presentation. Given that it's a relatively small group, feel free to ask questions all throughout. I mean, just raise your hand if needed. We've got a mic in the middle. I tend to produce a lot of slides and go through them quickly. Matter of fact, I start fast and accelerate if nobody asks questions. So we'll finish early if there isn't any discussion, but technically there's 60 slides, so there's 40-ish of content, and we got 40 minutes. So a lot of material that I can slow down or speed up. The president of the Apache Software Foundation. How many people here are Apache committers? Got one. Cool. Thank you. The Apache Way is a set of behaviors and practices developed by the ASF and designed to promote long-lived, successful projects by focusing on stable governance and encouraging new contributors. I won't be reading precisely the slides, except for a few of them. These behaviors are required of all Apache projects. We pride ourselves on projects that come to Apache. They go through a rigorous incubation process, and once they exit that, they don't tend to die. You don't find abandoned projects and the like. This venue required a rather long abstract that I've actually split across 3 charts. I'm actually not going to read this. The ASF is well known for industry transforming projects. Hadoop and Spark are examples of ones that are featured at this DataWorks Summit. Common set of principles, independently of undue commercial influence. Talk will briefly describe the history of the ASF, and I've got a number of slides, but I'll go quickly through them. Highlight a number of the principles. And core phrases covered by the talk: community over code, meritocracy, consensus, and if it didn't happen on a mailing list, it didn't happen. People that are in Apache recognize all 4 of those phrases because they are stated quite frequently. Actually, on our website, we've got 6 principles that have been cited. Different people have different definitions of Apache Way, so I'll take the canonical one from our website. Collaborative software development, people working together, commercial-friendly, standard license. You can actually take the code, put it in a product, and ship the product. You don't actually have to contribute back or do anything more than mention that it's derived from Apache software. Consistently high-quality software. People run their businesses on many of these projects. Respectful, honest, technical-based interaction. I'll get more details on that. Faithful implementation of standards. I didn't cover that much in this presentation, but a number of them, like, for example, the Apache Web Server implements HTTP, and we got XML projects and the like. Many of them are related to a standard, and security is a mandatory feature. We've got a rigorous process for dealing with security issues. I work for IBM, 37 years as of next month. It's a fairly long time, and I've been an ASF committer for 18 and a half years as of last month. So I just passed the point where I've been a committer for more than half of my time at IBM. I'm currently serving as president since November of 2016. I was director for 13 years, and a number of other roles: secretary, treasurer, VP legal, VP infrastructure, VP Jakarta, VP Whimsy. But I have a deep knowledge of all things ASF, so again, if you want to ask questions or whatever, I can probably either answer them or point you to the right person. Acknowledgements. Apache Way is actually a presentation that lots of people have given over time. I've taken content from these 3 individuals. My slides are all up on the web. If you go to Sam Ruby on Twitter, Sam Ruby, one word, I've got a link to the presentation, and you can go through them. And these 3 are links to their presentations from which I derived a fair amount of the material and added my own and subsetted theirs, et cetera, and updated it. About the ASF, this is this number of slides that I'll go through quickly because they're just sort of boring background stuff. Independent U.S. nonprofit volunteer organization with some paid staff. Virtual worldwide organization. We got committers all over the world. Began as the Apache Group in 1996, incorporated as the ASF in 1999. I actually joined as a committer in 1999, so I wasn't part of the incorporation, but just as soon as it did. Personal perspective, IBM, my employer, played an an early role in incorporation. James Berry was the manager of WebSphere. Yingping Shan was the technical lead for that product, and Drew Wright was an IBM lawyer. These three people met with Brian Bellendorf and others, and that helped catalyze the initial incorporation of Apache. IBM did great stuff 20 years ago, is all I'm really saying here. Not that it's, we still do great stuff, but part of the incorporation was that IBM felt that we couldn't do business with a website. We had to have actually some legal foundation behind it, and a lot of people in this room, I think, benefit from that. There's a link to a Salon.com article that was actually written in 2000 that was at that roughly just after that happened. Some people recounted how that happened, and it might be interesting background reading. Mission of the ASF, this is literally picked up straight off of our website. Provide open source software for the public good at no cost. Those words, a lot of people argued over them and whatever. I mean, in particular, we say no cost versus free because free software means something different to some people, et cetera. So we got a mission. Collaborative infrastructure for open source development. There's lots of good infrastructure out there. We do provide infrastructure for our teams. Legal entity for donation purposes, that's kind of key. The stuff you get goes through our processes and the like so that you can actually incorporate it. And the individuals contributing to it can be safe from lawsuits, et cetera. Shelter from lawsuits. If you contribute to the ASF and it's accepted, the ASF takes responsibility and you're protected a bit. PR and marketing, protection of the ASF brand. I'll go a little more into those things, but structure, we've got members, board, officer, project management committees, other committees and committers. Members are the shareholders of the foundation. They're nominated and elected by current members. So there was an original core group and they nominated people, and every year we nominate more. We added 51 new members this year, and we're currently at 731. As we add some, and occasionally some go emeritus, or we've had a couple over the years die, but largely that number just keeps increasing. These are people who are recognized for merit well beyond just simply doing committers to one project. They typically are interested in multiple projects or have been around for a long period of time and the like. Board consists of 9 volunteer directors. This is a list of names. Board appoints volunteer executive officers, the chairman, a vice chairman, a president, executive vice president, treasurer, assistant treasurer, secretary, assistant secretary. Again, this is just background stuff. Board committees, legal affairs and security teams. These operate on the authority of the board, basically. So if legal affairs says you need to do this or else, they can actually shut a project down if you don't follow, and that's true for security team. As president, I worry about the operations, and I've got a number of appointed officers that report to me that have got infrastructure, fundraising, marketing, publicity, brand management, conferences, and travel assistance responsibilities. Again, feel free to jump in, but again, I've not gotten to the good stuff yet. We've got 322 projects. I've got 2 arms up.
Are there actually any paid employees?
Yes.
Everybody seems to be a volunteer.
No, we've got roughly 6 infrastructure contractors, 1 VP of marketing. Let me go back to the previous chart. Not a large number. Infrastructure, 6 or so. Fundraising, we just converted 1 to a paid role. Marketing and publicity is paid. Brand management isn't paid, but we've actually got a lawyer that does work for us, and the lawyer, of course, charges us. So there is some there. Conferences and travel assistance, no. So roughly a dozen employees. Excuse me? We're actually technically out of Delaware just because that's where you tend to do nonprofits. We're all over the world. I mean, we've literally got a number of infrastructure contractors, one's in Australia, one's in Germany.
You have no office?
No. Technically, our office has been where Jim Jagelski's house is, but it moved to Virtual Inc. There's a company that does our finances and stuff, and it made it us easier just simply send all your mail there. So there's a company that does accounting type stuff for us, and they're paid too. So they're not, I guess they could be counted. 322 projects, 195 committees. A committee may have multiple projects. but typically, many committees are just one project. There are a number of them that are sort of umbrellas with a bunches of them. Incubating 52, these are ones that are coming towards, go ahead. I didn't hear the question.
You talked about ASF doing business. Can you give an example of what kind of business ASF does, and if there's like, if it's a business that involves monetary transactions, or if it's a different kind of business?
No. All our software is open source, free for the public good. You can take it, you can do whatever you want with it. We do have a number of direct contractors and the like who do some work for us to keep the lights running and that type of stuff. But I mean, VirtualInc does accounting, et cetera. But no, we don't sell anything. You cannot go to Apache and buy anything. Everything is at no cost. And really no obligation. We do have a license. The license, it's very, very few restrictions. Like, for example, you can't take our stuffs and then pretend like you created it. There's trademark laws, that type of stuff. But as long as you say, based on Apache software, you're pretty much good. And 6,387 committers, apparently 2 of which are in the room today. ASF budget, we actually do have a budget of roughly $1.9 million annually for all of our expenses. Just over half of it's for infrastructure. 13% is for conferences that we run. I mean, me coming here is not part of that cost, but there are conferences that are run by the Apache Software Foundation, 3 this year in particular. Publicity, fundraising, brand management, travel assistance. We will fly individuals who need help to our conferences. So there's a small amount of budget for that. Treasury, actually keeping track of the finances and the like, and general administrative costs. We try to run a relatively lean organization, but the costs of running this many projects has been going up. I'm totally volunteer. I don't take any money, as is most of the people I'm talking about. Income, general sponsorship. People can sponsor the ASF all the way up to a platinum sponsor is $125,000 a year. And I've got a list of those in a second. Conference sponsorships, you can sponsor a conference and you get a booth and all that other keynote, et cetera. Public donations, pleased to say that that's cash from regular folk, and that's equivalent to 1 platinum sponsor, basically, and other income. We've got all sorts of various programs, like you can donate a car and et cetera. If you want to go to our donating page, we've got information on that. I'm not going to read this. There's 8 platinum sponsors, 9 gold sponsors. IBM happens to be one of the gold sponsors. Silver sponsors, 8, 14 bronze sponsors. So a fair, diverse number of people are funding our bills. These are directly funded. We've also got targeted sponsors, people who pay not in dollars, but pay for things that we use. Like a number of our pieces of software run in the cloud, and Microsoft and Amazon Web Services and a few others are donating their cloud services to us, and so we do list them as the monetary equivalent. This is money we would spend if they didn't provide this for us. Other income, in 2018 we have 3 conferences, and these are the list of people who sponsored the conferences and, as I said, private donations. Apache license, a liberal open source license. There's a number of different open source licenses. There's 3 basic general categories. We're in the most liberal of it, which basically means you can take our software and you don't have to give anything back. Free software is the other extreme, where if you take it, you also have to make your stuff made available on our similar license. And that's less commercial friendly, let's put it that way. Grants copyright and patent licenses to the extent that we have the copyright. You have license to use it. Requires appropriate attribution. All you have to say is based on software, based on Hadoop or whatever project you're pulling in. Protects brand. You can't call your product Apache, whatever. That's what trademarks are all about. Easily reused by other projects and organizations. So That's what we pride ourselves on. Now to, in essence, the meat of the thing. That's background, that's information of what Apache is. The Apache way, how we operate, meritocracy, peer-to-peer, consensus decision-making, et cetera. I'll go through these in order. Meritocracy, it's about what you do, those that do decide. We do not have, like, for example, if you sponsor the ASF, that does not get you a seat on the board, that does not get you veto rights or anything else. Those that contribute are the ones that make the decisions. And merit is what you can do, defined by what you bring to a specific project. It basically gets you committer rights, et cetera, so you could actually make the changes directly in the code versus submitting it for consideration and vote for members, and then members vote for the board, et cetera. Growth, people start out as a user. A lot of people use our software. A subset of those become contributors. They actually submit a patch or say, here's a fix to the documentation or the like. Committer, if you do that consistently over time, you get the rights to actually be able to make those changes directly. Project management committee member, a subset of the committers, and in many projects it's actually it's equivalent to the whole set. These are people that set direction for the project. Each project has one chair or VP. That person's responsible for conveying information to the board, but doesn't get any additional rights to be able to make code changes, et cetera. Once a year, the ASF members go to look over the set of committers and PMC chairs and the like, and nominate individuals for membership, and those ones that determine who are the directors. So again, no dollars or whatever, it's all contributing. Yes?
So I worked for some time at DataStax with Jonathan Ellis and at Databricks with John Stoika and Tag. What happens in a situation where they're making committing code that could go either into the open source Apache version, or they could save that for the proprietary version of software that they could sell as, either DataStax or as Databricks. How do you govern that when you know that certain software could benefit the entire community when it's being saved for their proprietary software? Does that ever come up?
It definitely comes up, and we don't police that in any way, shape, or form. Literally, if you don't wish to contribute it, it's all voluntary. If you don't wish to contribute it, you keep it back. IBM makes changes we started from the very beginning making changes to the web server to integrate it better with our products. Over time, if Apache is making new releases of the web server, and each time you got to backport this to the newer version, that's a pain in the butt. So you end up being in your best interest to contribute back the pieces that can possibly benefit others. If it's totally specific, like as I said, IBM has hooks into our own software, there won't be interest in the community in pulling it in. But if you can make it a little bit more generic or whatnot, it can reduce your effort and reduce ours, and we're all into the win-win. We're not into saying, you've got to contribute it back. There are a number of people who based products off of Hadoop, that's fine. And there's just the natural benefit to them to contribute it back if it can reduce their maintenance costs over time, because nobody enjoys paying maintenance on software. And if you can get it into the core, what that means is it actually gets developed faster as more people contributing to it. So it's not something that we police, it's not something we coddle or coerce or in any way, shape, or form people who don't want to contribute back. Good question. Merit, not authority. The community must still agree. Merit gets you privileges, commit access, voting on committers, et cetera, but it does not get you, you don't get the final say. You still got to build consensus and work with others. I call it economics of merit. Merit does not expire. If you joined a project, we got a lot of people who are volunteers who join a project, they disappear for half a dozen years and come back. They're still recognized. There's a number of projects, obviously, since I've been around for 18 and a half years. There's a number of projects that I was once active on that if I wanted to become active again, I could. And merit does not transfer. Being on one PMC does not give you standing in another. So I've got merit in a number of projects, but there's 350 projects. I've got merit in a few dozen. Merit umbrella projects. One of the projects from the early days was Jakarta, which was an umbrella project. When Apache started out as a web server, and then quickly became, there was an XML project and a Jakarta project, which was basically all things Java. And those two things became large umbrellas, meaning they've got lots and lots of projects underneath them, which meant they didn't each have the proper oversight. So over time, I mean, I was the chair of Jakarta that ended up splitting it up into small little pieces. So we've got individual projects that previously were part of Jakarta. Tomcat is an example of one of those. It was originally part of Jakarta, now it's a separate project, and it's an ongoing viable concern. But the people who work on Tomcat are not necessarily the ones that work on Ant or work on Struts or that type of stuff, and they were all under one big umbrella, and that turned out to be unmanageable. That's why we split it up. Peer-to-peer, ASF work with people and not companies. I work for IBM. I'm treated, though, as an individual at the ASF. I obviously not been bouncing around lots of different companies, but there are many people who have, and you take your rights with you when you move to another company. All votes are the same weight. I may be president, but if I was talking on Tomcat, that doesn't mean I have any more weight than any other contributor to Tomcat. Participate based on needs. I'll talk later of how I was once a release manager of Tomcat and I contributed to it, but I haven't participated in Tomcat lately. It's doing fairly well by itself. Community over code is one of our mantras. Basically, if you are an excellent coder that basically pisses off everybody else, we would rather have less of you. We're very into building community, not have people that. I mean, it's not like, well, we gotta coddle this person because they do good work. No, we're not interested in that. And a lot of the people that are on the board and that type of stuff are people that are known for going in and fixing it when an individual project has to deal with that type of issue. Committers and members should hold one another with respect. I'm not saying there aren't flame wars that happen every once in a while. That happens everywhere, but it's relatively infrequent at Apache. Decisions are made on a mailing list. Most decisions without voting, sometimes by way of lazy consensus. It's a very important point there. Ideally, you don't do votes on everything, because votes are very, it makes people take positions and take concrete positions and the like. If you can just have people come to consensus and say, if nobody objects, we're going to proceed this way, that's usually much better from a community perspective. But there are things like releases. You got to actually have some track that you actually made a formal decision on that. So you typically have a discussion, you come to a consensus, and then you ratify that consensus by actually holding a formal vote. We've got definitions for +1, -1, +0, and -0, which is kind of, I mildly agree or mildly disagree, but proceed. All votes are equal. Long-time committer votes do not override newbie committer votes. We had an individual who left Ant for a few years and came back and said, well, I was the one who created it originally. Sorry, you get the same vote as everybody else. Consensus preferred, I sort of covered in that last thing. Choose the best path forward, but a contribution can be blocked if it does not fit in the project, if it needs work, is not technically ready, or breaks other things. So we actually do have occasional vetoes, and those are generally respected. If you are a committer, you can actually make a change and someone after the fact says, I object. And the social norm is that that person requests that you back it out and you make the reverse commit until we come to consensus. So again, this is all making certain that people act and treat each other with respect, not commit wars where someone puts something in and somebody says, nope, I don't like it, and yanks it out, and then bad things happen from there. Votes only when needed. Okay, that's what I said about 2 charts back. I meant for it to be done here. But calling a vote is often divisive and should be avoided. It's typically you come to consensus, and then after you come to consensus, you ratify that with a vote. Minimum time to make a decision, 72 hours. It's very important to us that we actually let everybody participate. And people may be in different geographic regions and that type of stuff. I mean, you may be in, we've got people in Europe and Australia and the like who won't necessarily see something that's posted on the mailing list until later. So we've set that as sort of the minimum time, and the word minimum is in bold. But if you post something there and it's not controversial and enough people looked at it, you still should wait about 72 hours to make certain that everyone had an opportunity to comment. No deadlines. Typically, projects do not have deadlines. Operations obviously does. If you are paying contractors and you got to get the bills out in time and the like, there are sometimes some conflicts with that. But projects themselves don't really have deadlines. The release happens when the release happens. It's not like a company where you say, here's a date, and we'll lose money if we don't get out on that date. When you got consensus, which means some things may end up shifting for a while until people have consensus. Typically, that's not create a lot of problems, but open communications. Communications are done online. Email lists are preferred method of communication. Almost all communications publicly archived. I'll come back later to that in a second. Most lists are open to any subscriber. They're out there. You can actually look through archives. We've actually got a fairly new tool that makes it easier to scan the archives and search for stuff. An example of personal perspective, and again, this is how things didn't work out well, but this is from 1999. I was working on Tomcat at the time. I had just become a committer, and one of the people from Sun is Sun is a corporation that originally donated this. They were later bought out by Oracle, et cetera, but they did most everything Java. Someone posted, since we're preparing for a Tomcat 3.0 release, please be very careful in what you check in. That's what they had posted, literally those words. 2 days later, a release was made by Sun employees after they met in a conference room before they left for Christmas break. They did not involve the community. That caused a minor flame war started by Jason Hunter. I feel sideswiped here. I've got a link to one of the messages. Not all the messages seem to be archived anymore, but the end result was I became the first non-Sun release manager of Tomcat. The easiest way to make certain that Sun played nicely was to make certain that the person who made the decision on the release only talked to them through the mailing list. It was not able to be pulled into a conference room and made a decision that way. So that's how I became pulled in to Apache. I started out just as a committer. I became the release manager, then became chair and board, etc. This is an example of what we don't want to do. We want people to make the decisions on the mailing list so everybody can participate. So we use mailing lists, dispersed community, dispersed in space, abilities and expertise, motivation and time. There are newbies. There are people who don't have the same background. This allows everybody to participate to the level that they can. And we typically have got separate mailing lists for users and developers and commits and the like. But we try to be open and engage people at all levels and suck them in. I mean, you start out by committing here's a typo on a documentation page, and then here's a bug report, and over time we get people that are committers. And most people only know each other through a project. There are many people here in this conference. This is a really relatively large conference who I know, but I wouldn't recognize their faces. So I'm walking around, and I may have ended up bumping into people that I've worked with, but wouldn't know it. Driving the point home, the mailing list is the official record of Apache interactions. If it didn't happen on the list, it didn't happen. It's okay. Oh, I gotta, okay. Speed up. Non-list discussions are reported to the list. We do have Jira, SVN, et cetera, that are copied the mailing list. Everything in Apache that can be public must be public. Only personnel, security, legal, or other delicate matters are discussed in private lists. We're fairly open. Asynchronous lists provide time for feedback, critique, new ideas, et cetera. Allows newcomers to learn at any time. Again, having the full archives are there is a great way to get participated. Transparent decisions. Decisions are made based on the community. It's not based on your boss or our technical need. I mean, I'm about to ship a release and I need to have, no, that doesn't carry you any weight. Motivation should be what's best for the project as a whole. If you have to ship a release for your own company and you have to take it based on a latest snapshot, that's your problem in essence. The right way to work, telegraph your intent, draft designs openly, submit works in chunks, welcome feedback along the way. Don't say, here's a completed thing. I worked on it for 6 months, here it is all. Show your work as you do it is the best way to get the community buy-in. Small commits, peer-reviewed. Security is mandatory. I'll go a little more into security in a minute. License compliance. No abuse of Apache brand or community. I think I've covered this slide. I was told I got 10 minutes, so I'm going to accelerate a little bit. No jerks allowed is a key early message. There's actually a YouTube video that this links to. Be excellent to each other. Bill and Ted's excellent adventure. But we value contributors, not lone wolves. Diverse communities attract more contributors over time. So you may be a great leader, et cetera, but benevolent dictators for life. BDFLs are not allowed in Apache PMCs. You've got to come to consensus. It's not defer to Joe. He's the one that will make the decision. Don't be a jerk. Avoid the poisonous people. There's actually a YouTube video. So I'm not going to show it here, but it's linked from the slides. And it's like 15 years old at this point. We've got a code of conduct. If you have abusive behavior, you can report it. And that ultimately feeds up to me, and then I end up working on it. Community, wear your hats. You're an individual, not an employee. You may also have a number of hats, like I may be president, as I said, but if I'm talking on Tomcat, I'm actually just a contributor. Individuals get recognition, and the side effect for you is the merit stays with you. As I said, you get to commit rights, you leave the company, you bring that with you. If I were to leave IBM, which my next stage will be to retire, IBM does not get to replace me as president. I was named as president as me. So I mean, I could retire and still be president, or the next president may come from some place entirely different. Check affiliations at the door. There's no way to really pull rank at Apache. Community independent governance. ASF owns trademarks, ensures neutrality in development, but the project itself owns the brand and governs independently. It's not a hierarchy, it's a set of individual communities. We have a set of trademark rules. I won't belabor them, but see the trademark policy for details. What's important is we've got a number of people who get their marketing department gets overly enthusiastic and say that you own or drive or control an Apache project. We get very testy about that, and we will sick Sally on you. Sally's actually a real person. She actually will convince you you're wrong and the like. She's a powerhouse. All Apache projects use the Apache license, and I described a few characteristics of that. User can copy, repackage, and even sell licensed software. This is contrary to copyleft, which says you got to contribute back your changes. Apache license is not equal to Apache software. There's many projects, like almost all of the software on Android phones is Apache license. That does not mean it came from Apache. It just meant they used the same license. Just because it's a license that works well for corporate companies. We've got a security team, we process for vulnerability handle and security mailing lists. Again, these are links that you can go research in detail later, but we take security very seriously. For new projects coming in, we've got an incubator, ensure all donations are according to legal standards, and the communities are here at guiding principles. It's not uncommon for a project to take 1 to 2 years in incubation. Some actually have been in there for several years longer. The shortest, I think, was like 3 months, but basically that's because the project already was well known. But we got a process for onboarding new projects when somebody makes a contribution. And there's a very detailed process of proposal, mentors, entry vote, creation, code, trademark searches, etc. First release. Each of these things are from the website that I linked on the previous page, which goes into more detail on how we bring new projects in. We've been around long enough that we've actually codified how this is done. Basically, the closing chart, cool. Why Apache? It's a well-known and respected brand in the open source world. Developing open source software owned by third party gives developers confidence and longevity. Most of the projects in Apache have been around for a long time. I mean, you can bet your business on them. And we pride ourselves on being a trusted group. And that makes, if you get through our incubation process, that can be accelerate to market adoption. Many people come and bring projects to Apache on the hopes that they help become either a de facto or actually a reference implementation of a standard. We're not unique in that. There's other places to go too, but we've had a fair amount of success in that. And working at Apache allows developers to collaborate with each other, with customers, partners, etc. So winding back around to the abstract, lots of projects that people depend on, billion-dollar industries, common set of principles. I think I covered what the principles were. History of the ASF, I blazed through that. Corporate governance structure, highlight a number of the principles. Community over code, meritocracy, consensus, if it didn't happen on a mailing list. And the 6 principles. Talked about how we do collaboration, talked about our license, consistently high-quality software. This open process pretty much gets you the quality in the sense it's got lots of eyes looking at it. Respectful, honest, technical-based interaction. Faithful implementation standards I didn't spend a lot of time on. And security is a mandatory feature I covered by talking about giving at least links to our security processes. Thank you. Questions? Yes?
Just out of curiosity, are there any recommended coding standards, testing standards that you try to drive across all these groups? Certainly in my experience, it's been incredibly uneven.
No, it isn't. We do not. We pride ourselves on the opposite, which is I see that as the downside of what you're describing as valid. But our hierarchical structure, nothing is being pushed from top down. If 2 projects want to do something different ways, that's fine. There's very, very minimal requirements on how you do things. Our requirements are more on how you collaborate, which is not coding standards, and what license you use, and policing your trademarks and security and those types of things. The things I covered here are what's important to us. But there are a lot of organizations out there that structure themselves differently. A organization may have, we do all things that are, Eclipse is, for example, basically an IDE, and then all the things surrounding that. We don't pull things in because it fits a strategic roadmap. And we don't pick everything because it's all the same language. We've got a mix of languages. We've got a mix of everything. We care about the collaboration model, not the coding standards. Yes?
Is there a process to delist a project if the project does not follow some of maybe the monthly report or something like that?
Okay, is there a process by which, I missed a word.
Yes, to delete a project from Apache.
Yes.
Because the project didn't do a good job.
Typically, that's not why we do it. We've got an attic, is what it's called. The place where software goes to sleep, is I think what we call it. But when a project loses interest, there's some things that were very interesting to people 15 years ago that aren't as interesting anymore, where we actually say, okay, we do not have a minimum. Our minimum is 3 individuals working on a project. And we really prefer them to be 3 independent individuals, not like 3 people from one company or 3 people who happen to all sit in, I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina. 3 people. If we don't have that, it goes to the attic. I only really know of one that sort of exploded, one project that basically people couldn't get along, and so yes, we kind of deleted it. But mostly the rest of them is because it lost interest. Again, things changed a lot in 15 years, 19 years. So things that were really, really hot, Java and XML were extremely hot at the beginning. Java's still pretty big. XML, still useful. But there's lots of other alternatives, etc. So some of the early projects, some of them are still viable, some of them are not, and we put them in an attic. Thank you, everybody.